Want you to know that you're coming out of your dry season, you're coming out of that dry spell, you're coming out from the wilderness experience. What is a dry season? What is a dry spell? A dry spell is characterized and denoted by a season of unproductivity, a season of unfruitfulness, a season whereby you can see that you're walking in lack, you're walking in poverty, and you're not experiencing the goodness of the Lord. You're not experiencing the will of the Lord. The will of the Lord has promised us that Christ came to give us life and life abundantly. So when you're in a dry spell, you're not experiencing that abundance. You're not walking in the will of the Lord, because the will of the Lord is not a dry spell, but it is abundance. When you look at the word of the Lord in Exodus, you realize that, or rather, you look at the Israel nation in Exodus, they were delivered from Egypt. They were delivered from bondage. They were delivered from captivity, because Egypt was a world system. It was a type of the world. And when they were delivered, God had promised them that they have to proceed and possess their own land, a land flowing with milk and honey. But when you look at their lives in Exodus, in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, you realize that they never immediately went to their promised land, because some of the characteristics that they exhibited were of a nation that pulled away from the commands of the Lord, was a disobedient nation. So that delayed their progress to the promised land. So when you look at that nation, the Israel nation, you realize that they went into a dry spell. They went into the wilderness. A wilderness can never be fruitful, because it's characterized by hot weather, where you can't even plant some crops. So you see that their life was in a wilderness. But when they sought the Lord, when they kept seeking the Lord, when they repented from their evil ways, you come to the word of the Lord in Joshua, where you see Israel progressing to possess their promised land. This was after God gave them some commands, some laws, some statutes that they ought to follow. So you also ought to follow the commands, statutes, and the word of the Lord that you see from reading the word of the Lord. I want you to know that God wants you to be delivered from that dry spell. God doesn't want you to stay in that dry spell. God wants you to experience His goodness, and He is delivering you to fruitfulness, to abundance, to a land flowing with milk and honey. So, how do you possess that land? You possess that land by having faith that the word of the Lord is true, having faith that God actually wants you to live in abundance. And also, as you have faith in the word of the Lord, you focus on God's promises. You focus on what God has promised you in the word of the Lord. And you daily declare the promises of the Lord. You daily declare that you are empowered to excel. You are empowered to prosper. You are empowered to succeed. You are empowered to be delivered from lack, because God has given you the ability to prosper, is giving you the ability to create wealth. So you keep declaring the word of the Lord, and you walk by faith and do not doubt.